Okay, hi, and welcome to part two of this home recording series. Um, this part is called sound and feel, okay, and we're actually going to get into talking about recording at this point. First, we're going to deal with acoustic instruments. Now, this is the point where people are going to start saying things like he's crazy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. To which I can only respond possibly at times, and slander and calumny. Okay, uh, everything I'm talking about, I know it works because I use it. Now, it may not be exactly what you're looking for. Okay, uh, and that's fine. I'm just trying to give you some hints to maybe help you get started. Okay, like I said, these things work for me. Some of the things I've picked up from years of doing this, as well as, like as I said in the first episode here, research, reading, books and about the people who made records and reading their interviews with them and just finding out, and applying some of it can't do, or it doesn't work, but that's it. So these are things that work for me. Hopefully they'll at least get you started towards finding your own sound, because that's the important thing. Uh, the whole point of this enterprise, this recording stuff, uh, is not to make you rich and famous and turn you into a celebrity. Sorry, that's not the point. Uh, Even the venerable Keith Richards says nobody really has to make records. Of course, easy for him to say, but but that's the thing. You want to document what you do, things like that, and you're proud of your work, and you want to share it with people. Maybe to the extent where you can try to sell it if you got some gigs coming up, make a few bucks, you can get some airplay on radio stations. Find them that do that, and that's fine. I mean, that's it. Uh, the thing is, whatever sound is, you want it to be one that is going to display your creativity to best advantage. Okay, that's the whole point. Your creativity, not copying somebody else's sound. And oh, we want to sound like these people. We want to sound like this. It's because it's not going to happen. You know. Um, it just doesn't, because you're not those people, any more than I am. I mean, I had to learn that early on. I wasn't going to sound like my heroes, no matter how hard I tried. I might use some of the same techniques, but it's still me. I'm the other side of the microphone, and that's the way it is. So, like I said, you're looking for your own sound here. That is the whole point here. Okay. Also, like I said, these are things that work for me. Another thing is this whole series, however many episodes it's going to be, uh, is really geared towards, again, true home recording at a budget. Uh, if you're somebody who's got 10 or 15 grand to sink into a spare room or a garage, to turn into a studio, you're not going to be listening to this probably. You're going other places, right? You're looking at, you're in a whole different ballpark. The techniques can still be applied, but again, my concern is here. Uh, you've got a limited amount of money, so you got to make the best you can. So we're not compromising the sound in these. I'm not talking about that. Not saying you should settle, okay, for a lesser sound because you don't have the bucks to do it. Uh, no, these techniques I'm going to be talking about work, okay, and you get good sound. All right, it's just it may not be what you would expect of a setup, because what we've come to believe. Like I said, this is minimalist stuff, equipment-wise, for instance, but it works. Okay, Hopefully it will work for you, or at least point you in the right direction for stuff that does. Okay. Uh, a note about this, like I say, we're not going to be talking about whatever the latest production techniques are, whatever is the hot thing that everybody's doing, uh, or going for whatever the contemporary sound is. The reason I say that is because that has a tendency to date what you do. You know, if you've been around long enough, or you do enough research and listening, you can tell within a few years, let's say within 5 years, maybe, when certain recordings were made. I mean, if you hear that big gated drum sound that Phil Collins used in the latter years of Genesis, you know, uh, yeah, that's in the 80s. I mean, it just for one example. And so you hear that. I mean, I hear stuff like that, and I think, oh, 1988. I was like, so what I shoot for when I'm working on my own stuff or for someone else is we're looking at a sense of timelessness, okay? And that again, it doesn't date the recording. You know, I want things to sound as if they could have been recorded anytime in, let's say, the last 50 years. Okay? Uh, Two good examples of that just happen to be two of my favorite albums. One is called The Band. It's their second album. It's got just tremendous songs on it. Everything from one called The Unfaithful Servant to The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, and others. I mean, for me, every track on it is terrific. It was recorded in 1969. There is nothing on that album, not a single note, not a production technique, nothing at all that tips off when it was recorded. It has this timeless feel to it. Okay, check it out for yourself if you find it. And you can find the tracks on like YouTube and stuff. They're everywhere, of course. The second album that's like that is by a Texas songwriter named Willis Allen Ramsey. Now, it was recorded in the early 70s. It's primarily acoustic, with other instruments brought into it. But you can't tell. It's not, it's not dated. It could be recorded anytime in the last 40 or 50 years. And it still holds up. I mean, you put those albums on and you don't think, oh man, no, this is just like being back in high school again, or no, it's not. You can't, maybe that's when you heard them, but apart from that, by listening to them, you can't figure out when they were recorded. They're not tied to anywhere. And that's what I think you look for. You look for your own sound, you look for that sense of timelessness. Okay. To me, those are important things. So now let's talk about acoustic instruments, okay? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm stumbling along here, bear with me. Obviously, we don't have sophisticated editing techniques, or you wouldn't have heard that last part, okay? So, but anyway, so we're going to talk, like I said, this is going to be about acoustic instruments. Rule number one, as far as I'm concerned here, with acoustic instruments, you never go direct, okay? You always use microphones. They are called acoustic instruments for a reason, right? Their sound comes from the body of the instrument. That's where it comes from. That's where the natural sound is. So that's where you go to. Guitars, acoustic guitars with pickups built into them, they don't give you the true sound. I don't care what anyone says. They're no more than electric guitars, slightly different, but they're still electric. You aren't getting the true sound. You can get, yes, you might get a decent sound on it. Say, yeah, that sounds pretty good, but it's not the true acoustic sound. So uh, sound comes, it needs air to travel, right? The fact that you can hear my voice is because we've got air. I'm not in a vacuum here. I'm not out in space. And that's why the sound carries, needs air to do it. That's the only true sound. Okay? Like I said, you can get a decent sound from them, not denying that, but I'm not interested in decent sound. I want true sound. True sound requires air. The best example I can give you of this to look at, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Yes, they're old timers. They came on the scene in 1969. Their first album, though, brought acoustic guitars back to the forefront. Also spawned the singer-songwriter mode that goes to this day. Okay, their first album, their first two albums they did, Crosby, Stills and Nash, and then later Deja Vu, as well as their early solo albums. Terrific guitar sounds. How did they get them? They used vintage Martins. That was their guitar choice. That helped. Graham Nash, though, he used to use occasionally a Gibson Everly Brothers model. Beautiful guitar. I think they stopped making them at the end of the 60s, but anyway, be that as it may. They did that, and how did they get the sound? They got the sound by using microphones, okay? And they duplicated that, or replicated that, I guess is the better word, on stage because they used microphones. Proof of that can be found on their Four-Way Street live album. You hear it there, those acoustics on there with microphones, and they're only using old Shure SM57s and 58s. Sound really good, okay? Uh, so there you hear that. And then, though, the difference is in you go up to into the 80s, and they did some videos, and they're on film, documented. By that time, they had switched to using high-dollar guitars with built-in electronics and pickups, which is really good for the sound and guys and the roadies, uh, but not so good for the discerning listener. Okay. Uh, and they sound okay. They sound fine if you don't know any better. Okay? So, and again, now, nothing against those three guys. They remain heroes to this day. But, hey, I'd be happy to tell them that then your sound went bad, you know? But that's just my ears, you know? So, okay, so we got that. Now, if you're going to be miking acoustic instruments, as always, you have to figure out what you're looking for. If you want simple guitar sound, right, real simple stuff, you can get by with one microphone and one track. Really, I'm telling you, you can get an omnidirectional microphone. What you do, uh, you use a process that they use. It's called corner loading, and the old blues recordings from the 20s and 30s, probably into the 40s even, but you listen to people like Robert Johnson, Blind Willie Johnson, and people like Booker White and stuff. What they would do is these guys would, whether they're from the Library of Congress or if they were talent scouts for a record company, they would roll into some town down in the Delta or out in Texas, they go to Dallas or Fort Worth or somewhere. And they just put out an ad saying that they're looking to record local musicians, okay? And they could be found in the back room of this store or in this particular room in this hotel. So what they do, they'd audition everybody, and when they found something they liked, they'd take them, sit them down facing into a corner, okay? And in that corner is a single, couple feet away from the wall, an omnidirectional microphone. And they would just have them play. And what happens is the corner, right, the way the walls form the corner, uh, reflect the sound back to the microphone as well. And that's how you get those old sounds. And it works. It worked then. It works now. You know, kudos to whoever came up with that technique. It's a good one. It's like I said, it still works. The thing to that is, one, you do need an omnidirectional microphone. Two, you want to make sure the walls that form the corner are hard. They can be paneling, be concrete, it can be uh, brick, it can be sheetrock that's been painted over. But you don't want drapes or any sort of wallpaper on it that's flocked and things like that and textured, because stuff like that absorbs the sound. You want a hard surface to bounce it back at the microphone. That's how you get that sound, okay? Uh, Another way you can do that, another early technique that still works. Again, you get an omnidirectional microphone. Let's say you're using a number of musicians. You're using a larger group. Okay, you got a trio, whatever, four. It doesn't matter. What you do is you set them in a circle, either sitting or standing around this omnidirectional microphone, and everybody plays. And when somebody takes a solo or is going to do a vocal, you know, you step up to the microphone, okay? And you take your solo, do whatever, you step back away from it. Now, more contemporary people will say, no, you can't do that because you've got all this bleed over and you can have fluctuating volume levels. You know, again, this has been done for decades. Whenever you read about older musicians, and I mean guys that are even older than I am, people like, you know, Johnny Cash, people who came up in the 50s and the 60s, they're going to talk about things they used to listen to on the radio late at night. You know, they used to hear whether it was blues or country or bluegrass or gospel or whatever. And that's how those things were done. And the Grand Ole Opry, for decades, used that technique. That's how they did their radio broadcasts, you know. And the stuff people listen to about, oh yeah, that's funky. Listen to that. Yeah, it sounds good, you know. It works. So if it applies to what you want to do, use it. Again, that's one microphone. You don't have to go out and buy a case of specialized microphones to get started recording. If you feel the need to do that later on, you can do it. That's fine. But if you're just talking about something simple, that's all you need, you know. And like I said, this has been proven decade after decade, you know. So, and the evidence is there. You can find it all over the place. So, you know, don't let anybody fool you saying, well, you got to have a couple of these. And no, you can get by with one if that's the sound you're going for, okay? Now, if you're going to if you're going to say use more tracks now, okay, and the thing, you know, what we're talking about here is what we're talking about. This applies to any instrument with strings, really, okay. So if you're talking about, you know, an upright bass, or violin, banjos, whatever, okay. So like I said, it works. Let's say you want to use more than one track, okay? Fair enough, not a problem. Okay, so you're going to need a couple of microphones. You can get by with two if you wish. Uh, you know, and this is where you get into things like microphone placement. You know, why do that? You can just go direct. Well, we've already covered that. Doesn't sound as good. So microphones, you can get a good acoustic sound. Like say you're building a song up track by track. You can still get by with one microphone, okay? What you want to do is you want to position it near, you know, and just basically stick it in front of the sound hole. You can move it around side to side, have it pointing up at it, pointing down at it, directly in front of it. You look around for the sweet spot. You look to where you get the sound you're looking for. Everything in this is trial and error, okay? It's great if you can just throw out the microphone and it sounds great. Chances are the It's probably not going to happen the first time. So trial and error, be patient. Move the microphones around, okay? Um, and another thing about that is something to remember. Jimmy Page, right? Led Zeppelin guy, terrific producer. Uh, his his rule is distance is depth. Okay, so you don't necessarily, if you close mic, real close to guitar, and you like that sound, that's fine. But if you move it away a bit, again, allow for some air, some space, right? You're going to get a different sound. It's going to be warmer, a bit more full. Probably going to like that. That sounds good because it's going to sound familiar. You know, you may not be able to pinpoint again a particular album, but you're going to say, yeah, that sounds more like an acoustic guitar because when you're just sitting in your room and you're playing for somebody, they're not like this in front of the sound hole, right? You're not doing that unless you're drunk. So, uh, so yeah, move the microphones around, move it closer, move it farther away. Distance is depth. Like I said, for me that works. May not work to you, or it may work to a lesser extent. Trial and error all the time. Okay. Uh, Another acoustic instrument, which people don't really think about so much, pianos. Okay? Same thing. Piano, you can get by with one microphone because pianos have such a great sound anyway. You can get by with one microphone. But for more control of the sound and things like that, for a fuller sound, you want to use a couple. Okay. If you have the great good fortune to use like a baby grand, open the top up, you can stick one in there and it's going to work. But if you got to bring them, try bringing them in from the side, maybe about a third inside, of the length of the keyboard inside to give you that full coverage, or move them forward and back in the body of it. Again, experiment, trial and error. That's why microphones have long cords, so you can do that. Move it around till you find the sound you're looking for. Okay. Now, isn't this simple? And it's all like this. Again, it's not rocket science. There's no magic to it. So that's why I promise you, I'm not oversimplifying things. You get really good sound doing this stuff. Okay. But don't take my word for it. Do it and find out for yourself, okay? Now, of course, there's other types of pianos. Let's say you're using an upright, okay? Open the thing up, hang the microphone over it, put it on a boom. Drop it down inside it if you want. You get really good sound that way. Again, trial and error. If you're using a spin-it piano, pull it away from a wall, you can stick the microphone behind a spin-it piano and get a good sound. Okay? Again, you can do it with one microphone. You get better sound with two. It'd be more full. What's what you're looking for, and how much you can get, how many tracks you've got, how many microphones you've got. All this comes into play. But like I said, if you have to do it with one, you're still going to get a good sound. So there is that. Now, the ultimate acoustic instrument, drums. You can get a really good drum sound, let's say good drum sound. You can get a good drum sound using just two microphones, okay? You can set them up in front at angles facing into the kit. You're going to pick up everything that way. You can also come in from the side over booms and down towards, or in at angles like this towards the kit, and you're going to pick up everything. And yeah, and the bass drum's going to come through. Well, it doesn't have a microphone. It's loud on its own. It's going to come through. Okay, so you can do it with two microphones. You can get a really good sound with three microphones. this is what I like using. I like working with 3 tracks for drums. I've done plenty of work with just 2, and and it sounds fine. The drummers themselves like the sound. They also like the fact that I put them kind of up in the mix. My dad, in his early day, was a jazz drummer, and this is his picture there. That's the old man, and and so I have this sort of innate feeling and sympathy for drummers. Want them to sound good. So, but when I can, when I've got 3 tracks to spare, that's what I use. And put 2, again, from the sides, pointing in towards the kit. And then I take the 3rd microphone and I do put it in front of the bass drum. But again, I put it a few feet away from it because the drum, it's going to be loud anyway, okay? So try to do that. If you want an example of how that sounds for people who say, no, you've got to have a microphone for every drum and you've got to have these specialized microphones for it, which is garbage. I invite you to go to my SoundCloud page, which is just soundcloud.com/BopaDoBill. That's BOPADUBILL. Bopadu Bill. Get there, scroll down till you find a track called Funky in the Bunkhouse. Okay? On that, my friend and the finest drummer it's ever been my pleasure to work with, John Horvath, plays on that. We used 3 tracks. As I said, I stuck a microphone on either side of the kit, one in front of the bass. And I like to say we were both pretty well pleased. It sounds really good. Hear it for yourself. See what you think. Okay? So you can do it. These are ways you can do that. Okay? Finally, a sidebar here on recording the harmonica. Okay? Now I play harmonica after a fashion. Okay? And what I use is the sort of Brian Jones technique. For you youngsters out there, Brian Jones is the guy who invented a band called the Rolling Stones. Harmonica player, everything player. This guy did everything. When he played, he just stood up in front of the microphone, played. I remember like that. Okay? Terrific guy. That's what I use. I just do it, go, have at it. Okay? The more popular and certainly more dynamic way to play is the Chicago technique. Little Walter used, Big Walter for that matter, Paul Butterfield, people like that, James Cotton, where they have a microphone and they cut the microphone and the harmonica, and it's a whole new instrument when you're playing like that. I mean, that is a whole different ball game. So that is another way to do that. So what do? Okay, you get that, you plug it into an amplifier, and you go. And you can, of course, stick the microphone in front of the amplifier using the same sort of techniques as you would miking the acoustic guitar. Move it around. See where you like the sound best. Distance is depth. Always remember that. But you can also be bold and adventurous. Stick the microphone in the back of the amplifier. You might be surprised at the sound you can get there. So, and one more thing about this. I have a friend, Kerry Vance, back in Texas, a dear friend of mine. Kerry is, apart from being aces as a human being and friend, he's a terrific guitar player. He is a terrific harmonica player. I was doing having a session at a small studio in Dallas, and Kerry was going to come in and play harmonica on it for me, and it was great. Very grateful for that. So we were sitting there talking, and before we did this, he was telling me that in the old Chess Studios in Chicago, one of the unique things they did is, they were upstairs in this old room, and it had a pipe that ran, metal steel pipe that ran along one wall and around the back, of the studio, of what they were using for the studio, and it came up the other side, and it was open at both ends, and it used to be old, it was part of the plumbing or whatever, but it wasn't being used anymore. But both ends were uncapped, right? Well, one day, some bright spark got the idea to stick a microphone at one end and then go to the other end and play harmonica into it. And like, whoa, there's an interesting sound. So, I'm thinking, wow, this is great. Thanks, Kerry, because he's got lots of stuff like that. And I listen to pick up. You never know what you're going to hear. Your friends sometimes are your best people to get things from. So anyway, so we go in to cut the track, and before we do, Kerry reaches into his bag and he pulls out this glass beer mug. Like, okay. So we walk into the studio, and same thing. Kerry gets his harmonica. Now we've got a mic suspended, okay, and he walks up and he cups his harmonica over the open end of the beer mug and starts playing. And I am not kidding you. And he nailed it in one take, and it has this real sweet, warm sort of echo to it, right? And I'm just sitting there going, Carrie, where did that come from? And he's, oh, that's just an old trick. It's like, okay, thanks, and I'll lock that one away because maybe I'm going to use this someday. So again, that's an example. Be bold, be adventurous. Don't be afraid to try stuff because you never know what's going to work or where it'll come from. Okay? That's going to wrap this up. We're going to talk about electric instruments next time out. So I know this one ran pretty long. It's over half an hour. But I hope you get some tips from it. Okay, thanks for sticking around, and catch you next time. All right. As Casey Kasem used to say, we'll see you on the flip side.